As a 19-year-old girl living in a small town, I never imagined that one moment would alter the course of my life. In the United Kingdom, finishing my last year of college, my stepdad Mark had been in my life for over 5 years. He wasn't just my mom's husband, he was dependable, charming, the kind of man who remembered my favorite takeaway and never missed a single parent's evening. I looked up to him in ways I didn't even admit to myself. Things were fine, at least they seemed to be, until she walked into my classroom one Monday morning. Miss Lydia Hart, new literature teacher, early 30s, tall, magnetic, with the kind of confidence that made you notice her before she even spoke. She wasn't like the others. She smiled too long. Her eyes stayed on you a little too deliberately, and for some reason, she seemed especially warm toward me, friendly, almost familiar. I brushed it off, but then came the school open evening. My mom couldn't attend, so Mark came instead. I remember how Lydia's face lit up when she saw him, a flicker too bright for a teacher-parent meeting. They shook hands, held eye contact, and then something strange. They laughed at something too comfortable, too intimate. My stepdad barely gave me a glance that night. He stood too close to her, as if the world didn't exist. The following morning at breakfast, he was humming cheerfully, never humming, and stirring his tea as if it were the best day of his life. I asked him about the meeting, and he dismissed it, saying that my teacher seemed to be very passionate about literature. However, it didn't end there. A week later, I caught him in the driveway on a call. He didn't see me, and his voice was low as he laughed, saying, "I can't stop thinking about the other night I froze." He never flirted on the phone. He barely used his phone. Something began to shift in me. My home no longer felt warm. My trust felt thin. I started noticing things. His cologne stronger on days he claimed to be working late. Lydia skipping our lessons more often, coming in with hair undone, distracted eyes. One afternoon I stayed back in class. Everyone had left. Lydia was on her laptop. I asked her about the missed lessons, and she smiled too tightly. "Just been tired, that's all," she said, but her eyes darted to the clock behind me, then to her phone. Then she asked if I was okay, said I seemed distant lately. She touched my hand. It lingered. I walked home that day with a twisting gut. I didn't want to believe it didn't want to be the girl who snoops, who suspects. But that night I opened his laptop. The password was easy, my birthday. The messages were there, dozens. Her name saved as Lee, messages about missed kisses, plans for Thursday night, and how he couldn't wait to hold her again. I sat frozen in the dark, reading every word, and in that silence I realized something had shattered inside me. This was just the beginning. My stepdad wasn't the man I believed him to be, and my teacher wasn't simply a teacher. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the messages, reading them over and over, hoping somehow I'd misunderstood. But there was no doubt my stepdad and my teacher Lydia were having a full-blown affair. It wasn't just physical. They talked about emotions, dreams, future weekends away. It made my skin crawl every time I thought about how he smiled at my mom, how he tucked her hair behind her ear while planning secret getaways with another woman. Something inside me burned. I didn't confront him right away. I watched. I observed everything. The phone calls outside the meetings that ran too long. Lydia's sudden decision to skip classes every other Thursday. Everything started lining up like a puzzle. I wished I'd never solved the worst part. My mom was oblivious. She trusted him, completely bragged to her friends about how lucky she was. I couldn't break her like that. Not yet. Then came Jamie, Lydia's son. He had just transferred to our college. He was nothing like her, quiet, brooding, polite. We got paired for a group project in English. Lit at first, we barely spoke, but slowly something shifted. It started with shared glances when his mom walked by. He looked at her the same way I looked at Mark, like we both knew something was rotten behind the smiles one afternoon during a break. I asked him carefully, "Do you get along with your mom?" He said, "Depends which version of her you mean," while laughing. He only said that, but it was sufficient because we immediately began discussing more than just school. We talked about lies, trust, and how families can appear to be perfect on the outside, but be decaying on the inside. We didn't discuss the affair because we didn't need to. The silence between us was more than just words and wasn't prearranged. Following college, we shared our first kiss while standing in the rain and saying nothing, but sharing the kind of silence that comprehends grief. It should have felt bad, but it felt like the first honest thing I'd experienced in weeks, so I kept the messages to myself. But I didn't tell him that one Friday night I saw his mother and my stepfather kissing like teenagers in a parked car across the street. My heart was racing, and I felt like screaming to rip the door open so they could both be forced to face what they were destroying. But instead, I turned and left. That night, Jaime held my hand under the stars, and I let him. Perhaps it was retaliation, or perhaps I just wanted to feel powerful. I could take something from them too, but the more time I spent with Jamie, the more it became something else. He wasn't just a distraction. He was gentle and present, and saw the parts of me I didn't show anyone. And somehow loving him felt less like betrayal and more like survival. But the lines were starting to blur. I was keeping secrets of my own now, secrets that, if exposed, could burn everything to the ground. Loving Jaime was easy hiding. It was not every message we exchanged. Every stolen glance in the hallway felt like lighting a match in a room soaked in gasoline. I told myself we were careful, but deep down, I knew secrets always find a way to scream. My stepdad became colder, more possessive of his time, and Lydia, she started acting like a woman with something to lose. Her smiles were tighter. Her mood flickered between guilt and paranoia, and Jaime, though calm on the surface, carried a weight behind his eyes that mirrored mine. He confessed one night quiet and without emotion that he knew about his mom and Mark. He'd overheard them more than once. He stayed quiet because of his little sister. He didn't want to break her world. I remember just staring at him, trying to understand how two people who had done nothing wrong were the ones drowning in silence while the liars slept soundly. We were both trapped in families built on dishonesty. Our bond only deepened. It wasn't just affection anymore, it was survival in Jamie. I found the truth I craved. He never pretended he didn't play games, and I let myself fall harder than I ever meant to. What started as secret walks turned into stolen nights. We talked about everything: what we'd do, if things were different, how we'd vanish from the wreckage. If we could, for the first time, I thought I could love someone fearlessly. But I wasn't naive. I knew we were being watched. One day, Lydia pulled me aside, her voice sweet but cold, and asked if I was getting too close. I laughed it off, but I could see it in her eyes. She must have known or suspected it, because Mark began yelling at me more, accusing me of acting out, and he was always quick to shut down any questions about where he'd been. Then, on the night everything changed, my mom chose to surprise Mark with a dinner out. I went along, even though I wanted to be somewhere else, as if the universe had a cruel sense of humor. A few minutes after we sat down, Lydia and Jaime entered the same restaurant, and my heart stopped when I saw the panic in his eyes instantly mirror in mine. Lydia also noticed, and her eyes froze as they darted between Jaime and me. Something in her face twisted, not out of jealousy or confusion, but recognition that we were now more than just her son and her student. We were a threat. Her mask briefly cracked, but it was enough, and my mom laughed next to me. Even though Mark didn't look up, I could feel the deafening silence that followed. Everything seemed to be on the verge of collapse, with our secrets no longer safe, and those who believed they controlled the lies about to lose everything. I was no longer afraid of the fire. Instead, I was prepared to watch it all burn. It didn't take long for everything to fall apart. 2 days after that dinner, my mom discovered the messages I hadn't planned and didn't need to. She was searching Mark's laptop for a receipt when she opened the wrong window, and when I got home, she was sitting on the edge of the bed with her eyes hollow and the screen frozen on the message, "I miss the taste of your mouth." Instead of screaming or crying, she simply looked at me and said, "How long have you known that I told her everything, every message, every lie, that I couldn't spare her because she deserved the truth, even if it destroyed her?" She listened in silence. "I gave that man everything and walked out of the room," she muttered after I was done. But she didn't take a coat, just her keys. Mark didn't even deny it when she confronted him later. Instead, he stood there futilely attempting to turn it into some make-believe justification about needing attention. I watched my mom fall apart, and I detested him for making her doubt her value. He packed up and left that same evening without saying anything, without arguing, just with a slammed door and silence. But Lydia wasn't finished. The next day, she pulled Jamie out of class, then tried to find me alone. She stopped me outside the college building, face red with fury. She didn't even ask if it was true. She just started spitting venom. "You think you're clever playing games with my son? You don't know what you've done." I told her she had no right to speak to me about betrayal, that she had lost the second she touched a married man. She slapped me with her eyes, but her mouth stayed shut after that. By the end of the week, Lydia was gone. Someone had reported her to the school board. I don't know who. Maybe Jamie, maybe a parent. But she resigned before anything official happened. It didn't matter. Her career was over. Jaime and I drifted after that. Not because the feelings died, but because we both needed space to breathe. Everything around us had collapsed. He had to be there for his sister. I had to be there for my mom. The guilt was heavy, even if it wasn't ours to carry. We stopped messaging every day, then every week, then not at all. Months passed. Life started settling. My mom began smiling again, slow but real. I started uni, new place, new faces, but Jaime never really left my mind. One afternoon, out of nowhere, I saw him again, same eyes, same stillness. We didn't run into each other. We found each other, and in that quiet moment there were no lies left, just two people who'd survived the same storm. He didn't ask me for anything, and I didn't offer promises. We just stood there like maybe the wreckage had cleared just enough to start over. I don't know what happens next, but I know that betrayal taught me something. Love never could, the truth always comes out. And sometimes, even in the middle of chaos, you find something worth holding on to.